Hello everybody, my name is Anthony Giuliani and welcome back to the second part of my CEDH deck tech for Azami Lady of Scrolls. And in the last video, we discussed that this is a combo control deck that usually tries to win the game by playing a Paradox engine and using the Azami synergy with it to close out a game with usually Tezzeret the Seeker or Jushi Apprentice milling. There's several other win conditions, but you can look at the other video for a more detailed discussion of that. So in this video, we're going to talk about card choices. And we're going to go through the whole deck. We're going to discuss them in order of creatures, then lands, then artifacts, instants, planeswalkers, and sorceries, as I believe that is the viability and the importance of each card type in a tier. I lack enchantments, as you may have noticed. Mono Blue doesn't have very good ways of getting enchantments, and I don't feel any of the enchantments warrant an inclusion. The very last enchantment in the deck was Future Sight, but I took it out because even though the effect is powerful, the mana cost is the same, and it does effectively what Azami does. It was nice to have it in the red-black matchups, but as the deck got more competitive, I found red-black matchups were decreasing, and the need for Future Sight was also decreased. I will go ahead and talk about some other card choices, just like 10 notable exclusions. It's not exhaustive or anything, but I figured I'd give everyone some insight on why I'm not running these cards, because I'm asked why I'm not running them quite often. But all that said, we'll go ahead and jump into the deck tech itself. So as I said, we're going to start with creatures. We're going to start with, we're going to go CMC up, and we'll start with this wizard. Martyr of Frost. It's 1 blue, and he costs 2 colorless mana. You can reveal X blue cards from your hand. You sacrifice this guy, and you can counterspell unless they pay X. And he's a 1/1. One thing you'll notice is a lot of my creatures are very, very weak. Their main purpose is not combat, as you would imagine. It's mostly tapping to draw cards. A lot of them are disruptive. A lot of them are counterspells attached to bodies, or they have some other value by, like, say, drawing cards or such. So this guy is very good. He's very cheap. He came out of the deck for a while, but he made his way back in. Lots of artifact synergies. The best thing about him is the colorless requirement of his ability, meaning you can use Soul Ring or Crypt Mana, or even a Grim Monolith if you're desperate. A really cool thing I love doing with this guy is playing him on turn 1, and then say around turn 3, you can cast Whir of Invention and get Mana Crypt and still use this guy's ability. Oftentimes he'll basically be another version of Mana Leak in creature form. Pretty good card. Siren Storm Tamer, a new wizard on the block. Very, very powerful ability. It is 1 mana, flying, pay a blue, sacrifice this creature, counter a target spell or ability that targets me or a creature I control, and it's a 1/1. So this is really good at stopping stuff like Embercool triggers, or other ways people like to win the game. Aetherflux Reservoir makes it a little bit harder for that to kill you. Another cool thing with him is he protects Azami, and just has a lot of synergies. The fact that he's a 1-drop wizard makes him work very well with Patron Wizard, as you'll find out later down the line. The fact that he has flying means he's a pretty robust blocker when I need one. Very solid wizard. I'll go ahead and talk about a Phyto Alchemist. Added this guy recently when I added Grim Monolith to the deck. He's been performing very well. The morph cost is actually super relevant. A really cool turn to play is play Grim Monolith, play this guy, and then the following turn pay a blue to flip him and use him to untap the Grim. Lets you race really far ahead really quickly. He works with all the artifacts in the deck, and also a couple creatures pretty notably. Jushi Apprentice becomes better with this guy, and Jace Vern's Prodigy. This guy serves a lot of utility in the deck, and he's very fun. And Willbender is not in the deck, but the fact that he has Morph 2, a lot of people often think this guy's a Willbender, and you can really psych people out. It's really fun. Brawl Chief of Compliance. He's an excellent wizard too. He's my best defender, 2 mana, 1/3 for the cost. And that's pretty relevant sometimes, because it helps keep aggro at bay. He makes my instants and sorceries cheaper, so he makes mana, And he also gives looting ability to my counter spells, which is really, really cool. All for the cheap price of 2 mana. When this guy came out, I was really, really impressed. I honestly thought about changing him to the commander the second I saw him spoiled. But I'm a dedicated Azami player, so I decided to stick to my guns and my loyalty, and I stuck to Azami. But all that said, he definitely found a way into the deck. Jace Vryn's Prodigy. Another excellent wizard. 2 mana, 0/2, tap to draw a card, then to discard a card. If you have 5, he flips into the Planeswalker form. 5 loyalty starting off. It's really beefy for just 2 mana investment. +1, give a creature -2/0 until next turn. So he's very, very defensive. -3, flashback a spell, but it's a little bit different from flashback. If you use buyback, you can get capsize out of the graveyard. If you use Remand or Unsubstantiate or Venser, you can actually pick cards back up in your hand too. Really, really cool with stuff using like Muddle the Mixture, Transmute twice. Then lastly, -9, you get an emblem that mills 5 cards every time you cast a spell. It's a nice way to finish the game if you need to, but honestly, I've yet to do that. It's just nice to have that option. Very, very good card early game, great card late game. Jace has been more than pulling his weight. I love this card. Definitely worth using. If you don't have one, I suggest you get one. You could also be the commander, honestly, but just like with Brawl, I like the loyalty to Azami a little bit too much. So, sorry, Jace. You're definitely a great card, though. Alright, now we got Juicy Apprentice next. As I said in the other video, this can be a win con. He's 2 mana, 1/2. You pay 3 mana and tap him to draw a card. It does have Summoning Sickness, but that's fine, because you're probably going to play him turn 2 and sit on him turn 3. You draw a card. If you have 9 or more, you flip him, and then when he's flipped, he's a 2/3, and you can pay 5 mana, and target player draws X cards, where X is the number of cards in your hand. This guy can double your hand size with the engine, untap again, double it again, say you have 40 cards now. Now you mill everybody 40 cards till everyone's dead. Super, super cool card. One of my best and favorite ways of winning. It's very hard to interact with once you get that engine synergy going. Pretty much the only thing I fear are split-second cards, but honestly, if this guy dies, it's not the end of the world. There's lots of ways to win. Next up, we have Sea Scryer. It's a humble card. 2 mana, 1/1. It's errata to be a wizard, for those that are wondering. You can tap it to add a colorless, or you can pay a colorless and get a blue out of it. It's a very, very solid wizard and has served me well. It's just basically a utility mage. Either it'll tap the draw with Azami, or it'll give you mana to play your spells faster. Snapcaster Mage. Little needs to be said about this guy. 2 mana, 2/1, flash. Give a spell in your graveyard, flashback. This guy is a format powerhouse, and pretty much every format he's legal in. Super powerful wizard. Notably, compared to Jace, this guy lets me reuse counterspells more easily. So, very, very powerful card. Next up, we have Vindelican Aether Mage. 2 mana, 1/2, flash. Whenever it ETBs, you can bounce a Sliver. That almost never comes up, but a cool thing to remember is you can bounce Changelings. The main reason why I use this card is the wizard cycling. And this can actually win you the game because you can get Trinket Mage, which gets Map, which gets Inventor's Fair, or you can get Spellseeker to get Transmute or one of the other tutors. Really nifty card. A lot of the times early game I'll get Trinket Mage. Late game you can Wizard Cycle for Venser for an instant speed Remand. Lots of utility, plus just a 2 mana flash 1/2 wizard. Still pretty solid. This card has earned its spot in my deck, and I think it'll stay for quite some time. Next up, we have Patron Wizard. This guy is a boss. He isn't included in every wizard deck. The mana cost is a little bit strenuous at triple blue, like Azami. But every time this guy sits on the field, he pretty much ends the game by himself, tapping wizards to counter spells. It's just such a stacksy game state. Most decks can't come out of it. Definitely a powerful card. Spellseeker, the new wizard. 3 mana, 1/1. It's a human wizard. When it ETBs, you get an instant or sorcery that costs 2 or less, put in your hand. Very powerful effect. Can help me win the game. And just get lots of things. High Tide, counter spells like Mana Drain. It just does a lot of value. It's not quite as good as Trinket Mage because it's not as mana neutral, but it's still very, very powerful and worth using. Here's the man himself, Trinket Mage. Very, very powerful wizard. When it enters the battlefield, you get to search your library for an artifact that costs 1 or less, reveal it, put it in your hand. It's 2/2, 3 mana. Oftentimes this gets mana credit, making it effectively cost a single blue. Trinket Mage is ridiculous. Late game he gets Sensei's Top, early game he gets mana rocks like Mana Crypt, Soul Ring. Just provides a lot of value, and my package for him is pretty powerful. Probably one of my favorite wizards in the whole deck, honestly. I get this guy a lot with that wizard tutor. And now we have Venser. 4 mana, flash. When he comes into play, you can return a spell or a permanent to the hand. The reason why this guy is still in the deck is he has flash. 4 mana is still doable, and he literally solves any problem you have. Lastly, he actually helps you generate Infinite Storm, because as long as you can make 4 mana, 2 of it being blue, and you have the engine, you can just keep casting this guy over and over again and bouncing himself. And that should get you there most of the time, just like Capsize will. Very, very cool card. I still think he's worth using. And then lastly, I have the most expensive wizard herself, Azami. 5 mana, 3 of it needing to be blue for 0/2. It's quite laughable, but she has this really awesome ability, as I'm sure most of you are aware. Tap a wizard, draw a card. And it's not affected by summoning sickness. This wizard will draw you so many cards, it's mind-boggling, and it's very powerful. Basically, the game plan of the deck is mana ramp, play some wizards, cast Azami, draw some cards, get the engine, win. And you can do this remarkably consistently. Every single game, pretty much. You should be able to do this. And it's all thanks to the massive card draw that Azami gives you. That's why I love playing her over stuff like Teferi Temporal Archmage, over Arkham Daxam or Sisay. Essentially, all you need to do is play Azami and wait a turn and you win. It's literally that simple. The only way that doesn't occur is if you get extremely unlucky and brick a billion cards on lands once you get Azami down. And that doesn't happen too often. Again, usually it's cast Azami, wait a turn. Does anybody answer this? All right, you win. It's basically like playing it ad nauseum in the command zone. It's really cool. So that said, I do have 2 other creatures that aren't wizards. You run them for their cheapness and their utility. First up is Gilded Drake. 2 mana, flying 3/3 is already a good deal, but here's the trick. You need to swap control of this Gilded Drake with any creature your opponents control. So they get this really powerful flyer for 2 mana, but you get to take whatever you want. And oftentimes that's way, way better than a 2 mana 3/3 flyer. This guy's in the deck because he's super cheap. Some commanders need to be answered immediately. Stuff like Yisan, for example. And having a Gilded Drake in the deck to get with Muddle the Mixture or other things, it's just very, very, very powerful. Plus, it's a blue card, so it pitches to Chrome Mox and Force of Will if it's unnecessary in matchups like Teferi. Super good card. I suggest everybody use them. And my last creature is Phyrexian Revoker. This was added recently, too. Helps me deal with stuff like Soul Ring and Mana Crypt. Mono Blue's not the best at doing with that. It's 2 mana, 2/1. As it comes into play, name a non-land card. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name can't be activated. So you can name mana abilities, just not lands. And as I said, Soul Rings and Mana Crypts, it hits a lot of things. This thing crushes Planeswalker commanders. I just beat a Teferi the other day with it. Helps stop stuff like Tasigur too. Azami herself. Helps stop Dramatic Scepter, especially because I'm not running Dramatic Scepter. Helps stop Line Diamonds. Does a whole bunch for so little. And it's 2 mana artifact. Almost every tutor in the deck can get this guy. Or get a card that can get this guy. Super, super powerful card. I find it worth including. And also, if you literally don't need it, you could still play it anyways, name the most likely relevant card, and get rid of it with Transmute Artifact or Word of Invention, tap it. Punches Planeswalkers to death too. It's a pretty powerful card. I enjoy using it a lot. Alright, so there's the creature base. I think the deck would not exist without the creatures in it, so I wanted to cover that. Equally as important, we're going to go into lands. It's very hard to play a game of Magic without any mana. And lands are the most consistent way of doing it. So while the wizards are what makes the deck, the lands are what helps the deck get there. So first up, we're going to go in alphabetical order, since obviously all lands have the same CMC. Got Academy Runes. This land's questionable to the deck. Still not totally sold on it, but it does do several things. One, it gives me another land in the deck. And as I said in the last video, what the deck often loses to is mana screw. So having enough lands to ensure I always hit my land drops is nice. Two, it gives me so much more consistency on winning with the engine, because now I don't need to worry about mill as much, and I'm able to fight through the Paradox engine being destroyed. Lastly, it also offers my deck a win condition. I have several artifacts in the deck that can throw themselves in the graveyard. Mox Diamond, Wayfarer's Bauble, and Expedition Map. And this lets me get them back over and over and over again. And thanks to this synergy, I can actually mill people out by waiting several times. It would be an extremely long game, but this deck's capable of locking people out and waiting until they mill out. It's kind of crazy that a land can be a win condition, in my opinion. Ancient Tomb, totally worth using. The pain is important to keep track of, but in a 40 life format, it's totally worth it, in my opinion. This card will help you ramp ahead and gives mono blue precious mana acceleration. Totally worth using. It actually makes Expedition Map a mana ramp card. Alright, so next I have all 4 fetch lands. And these cards help me get islands. They help dodge stuff like Carpet of Flowers and Choke, so they're pretty good at that. For a little while, mostly Carpet of Flowers. Helps you dodge stuff like land destruction. And the shuffle effect is one of the major reasons why they're included in here for stuff like Brainstorm, Sensi's Divining Top, Jace the Mind Sculptor. I find that the utility they add to the deck is totally worth the 1 life. They also help thin the deck marginally, but every little bit helps, especially when I have a higher land count. Being able to thin it out when I want to is very useful. Next up, we have the newest card in the deck at the time of this video, Inventor's Fair. This is a land. Again, I usually lose most often a land screw, so I run 35 lands. Inventor's Fair is here to help buff out that. It makes colorless, which is unfortunate, but it does have this really powerful ability. Pay 4 mana, tap it. You can sacrifice this, and you can go get an artifact. This helps Trinket Mage and Expedition Map become win cons. Gives me another way to get the engine or other important artifacts like Vidalcan Shackles. It also has this nifty ability of gaining you a life every upkeep. Now, you do need 3 or more artifacts to gain a life or search, but it still makes mana no matter what, and that's why I prefer this over something like, say, Mox Opal. Additionally, if you do have the 3 artifacts, chances are you should be able to just go off once you do get the engine, and you should have enough mana to activate this ability. This card's won me a couple of games, and I'm hoping to see it win more. Like I said, it's the newest card in the deck, so we'll still see. Got a lot of testing to do with this card, but so far it's been promising. Next up, we have Minimo's School at Water's Edge. This is a good land to grab once you already have Azami out and you draw the map, but you don't quite have the ability to go off with Adventure's Fair, because this land taps for blue and can untap a legendary permanent. Now, the main reason why this land is in the deck is the synergy with Azami. It's basically pay blue, draw an extra card. Very useful. Now, you can untap any legendary permanent, including opponent stuff, so if you want to play politics, there's a nifty little way to do so. I really enjoy the card. Again, it gets around Choke, gets around Carpet of Flowers, and it's just all around a pretty good card. Then we have Seated Sign-On. Similar reasoning that the other one, gets around Chokes, gets around Carpet of Flowers. It has several artifact synergies with the deck, like a Fettle Alchemist, which I showed you earlier, Trinket Mage, Tezzeret the Seeker. Also helps make Adventure's Fair a little bit better. I find this land totally worth using. I really enjoy it. Then I have, as one would imagine with mono blue, 24 snow-covered islands. And there's really no reason to run snow in my opinion. I don't play extra planar lens. I don't run scrying sheets or anything like that. I just like them because I think the picture is important. Having all the same artwork is important too because it gives you a competitive advantage in the sense that if your opponent gets to look at your hand, it's harder to track which cards they've seen. And lastly, the basic lands are super nice because I have stuff like the fetch lands, I have Wayfarer's Bauble, and I have several several island dependent cards like High Tide. I have the Dalkin Shackles. So having a high island count is super important for this deck. Days. So having 24 islands, I find is so far the right number. Helps go with the high land count. And still gives me 11 other lands to dance around stuff like Carpet of Flowers and Choke, while still experiencing the full advantage of Mono Blue with its very robust set of cards that you could play, like Azami herself, Patron Wizard. Very, very potent stuff. You could pretty consistently get blue for mana drain. Really awesome stuff. But again, running enough land so I hit all my land drops, but also can play around other stuff is really key in my opinion too. And lastly, I run Strip Mine and Wasteland. And the reason why I run these cards are there are some lands that just aren't very fair in CEDH, and having a way of getting rid of them is super important in my opinion. And Strip Mine does Wasteland better, but I find both effects are quite useful. This helps you get around stuff like Tabernacle at Pentravale, Cavern of Souls. You can often just win games by mana screwing people out of the game. It's harder to do that in multiplayer, but 1v1, I see this quite often. A turn 1 Strip Mine or Wasteland often can spell game over for an unprepared opponent, especially when they're playing more than one color, unlike us. So I really, really like Strip Mine and Wasteland, and Mono Blue really appreciates the interactivity with lands. And oftentimes, if you have a Strip Mine or a Wasteland and you have Winter Orb in play, you can further lock people out. You can destroy their lands that produce 2 mana under the orb and, again, further lock them out. Very, very potent cards. So while the deck can run with just creatures and lands, there is a way to make the deck very, very much better, and that's by adding artifacts. So we're going to talk about artifacts. I think I run currently 19 artifacts in this deck. You already saw the Phyrexian Revoker and the Seat of the Synod. So we'll go ahead and talk about which artifacts I am running and just the artifact pile. So we'll start with Chrome Mox. I think this card is really worth using. I think I run about somewhere of, well, I have 35 lands and I have 17 artifacts, so that's 52 minus the commander. So I run about 40, it should be about 47 blue cards. And that really means getting Chrome Mox online is pretty easy. And the Mana XL Mono Blue is super useful, and with all the artifact synergies and the engine, I want every great card I could possibly run that passes my test of individual utility, and this card does. Everflowing Chalice, just an excellent mana ramp card. The key thing with this card is the multi-kicker. Oftentimes you'll pay 2 mana to tap 1, but this can become a Sisay's Ring. It can become a 6 mana Thran Dynamo. It's just extremely flexible how much you cast. I've even cast this for 0 just to get a free engine trigger when I really need to just conserve mana to get off the ground. Very, very useful card. The only downside of the way its casting cost work is you can't get it with Tezzeret the Seeker for much, but you can get it with Trinket Mage. Very cool card. And next we have Mana Crypt. This is probably the single most powerful card in CEDH and EDH in general. You pay 0 mana, you get 2 mana for it, and you take 3 damage each turn. I think in all of my games of Commander, I've died to Mana Crypt maybe twice, at most 3 times. So the damage does not matter most of the time, but you should keep it in mind, especially in a deck with as tiny of creatures as I have. If you take a lot of damage early, sometimes you have to get rid of your own Mana Crypt to survive, especially if you're planning on locking out the opponents for a long time. So keep the damage in mind, but don't worry about it too much. Mana Crypt will explode your ability to play the game. you will come roaring out the gate so fast your opponent won't be able to handle you. Mana Crypt is probably the #1 tutored card in this deck, and for good reason. Mox Diamond, very, very powerful card. I'm running 35 lands, so I can abuse the Mox Diamond probably better than a lot of decks. And again, with the engine, you want a lot of artifact acceleration, and this helps play around Winter Orb too very, very well. Expedition Map, a way to win the game with Inventor's Fair, mana ramp with Ancient Tomb, extra cards with Minimo School at Water's Edge, more islands for your Vidalcan Shackles. Expedition Map kind of does everything while also being a very cheap artifact to trigger the engine. Great card. Mana Vault, very powerful artifact acceleration. Helps you get so far ahead so quickly, and I run several cards that can take advantage of the large amount of colorless mana, as well as stuff to untap it, like Tezzeret the Seeker and a Fiddle Alchemist. Mana Vault's totally worth using. I suggest if you don't have one, you get one. Sensei's Divining Top really helps you dig in the deck, can stabilize the combo. The way you stabilize the combo is you can have Azami out the engine at the top and say like a Soul Ring that's hanging out right here. And you cast the top using the mana off the Soul Ring. You have one floating. You tap the top, put it on top of your deck, and you tap Azami to draw the top again. And you use the extra mana and recast the top. And you can just do this as much as you need to during the Storm turn. Before that, it helps you find lands, works well with fetch lands, and the rest of the deck. You could draw extra cards with this using a Fiddle Alchemist. You would tap it to draw a card, tap the Alchemist to untap top, tap the top again, and draw some more cards. You can actually do that during the combo turn as a fill-in for Azami, and I've won several games doing that. Top is super powerful, really cool in this deck too. Definitely use it. Next up, we have Soul Ring. Similar to Mana Crypt, probably slightly better in normal EDH, but in CEDH, the Crypt is king. This card will provide you so much mana so fast, it's very hard to lose when you have a Soul Ring start. Super, super powerful. Even better in this deck with Paradox Engine WinCon. Definitely get one. Abuse it, love it, use it. All right, moving on. We got Wayfarer's Bauble. This is very humble mana acceleration for mono blue, but again, it's cheap, so it triggers the engine. It kills itself for Academy Ruins WinCon, and it helps get more islands for stuff like Daze and Vidalcan Shackles and other cards. Very, very useful. The shuffle effect's nice too. Felwar Stone. This often makes blue mana. It's 2 mana, tap for a mana of any color a land an opponent controls can produce. Often taps for blue, and in the rare instance that it doesn't, you're probably going to win anyways because you're not playing against blue opponents. Very, very nice mana rock that makes blue, and it's cheap. I really like using this card. It's probably going to stay in the deck for the foreseeable future. It's not the best card, though. Grim Monolith, another one of the super powerful artifacts that makes more mana than it costs. It's easier to untap the Mana Vault because you can pay 4 at any time. And it works well with the Fiddle Alchemist and Tezzeret the Seeker and the engine. And the good thing about playing in mono blue is I can often sit on counter spells, and if I don't need to counter anything, just untap the Monolith. Super powerful card. Totally worth using as well, in my opinion. The cool thing with Monolith and Mana Vault that works extra well too with Transmute Artifact. If you haven't tapped the Vault yet, you could tap it as you cast Transmute Artifact to go get something like Gilded Lotus. Pretty mana neutrally, because you get 6 mana out of it, but you put 4 mana in usually. So you actually kind of come out mana positive by using Transmute Artifact on this stuff. It's pretty nifty. Well, let's see. You pay 2 mana for Grim, 2 mana for Transmute. You tap the Grim for 3 to upgrade, and you get 3 back. So you're paying about 4 to get 3 every turn for the rest of the game. So it's pretty mana neutral for psychotic mana ramp that is Gilded Lotus. Gilded Lotus is extremely powerful. Or you can just use the Grim by itself to help you race out an extra early Azami or Tezzeret. Next up, we have Winter Orb. Winter Orb is probably one of the most powerful cards in Commander 2. It's my best stacks piece. This will just lock players out of the game that aren't prepared for it. I've won several games off the back of Winter Orb. Definitely try it out if you haven't yet. It's the only like super stacks focused piece I do run, but its power can't be understated. I love getting it back with Academy Runes or stuff like getting out of the deck with Tezzeret the Seeker. Super potent card, especially with all the artifact ramp we run. It's actually why I run the snow-covered islands for flavor reasons too. They're used to help me take advantage of an extra planar lens of an opponent if they're following that mindset, but also they look really nice with the Winter Orb. So like I said in the last video, flavor isn't a focus, but if it can be accommodated in a way that doesn't weaken the deck, it's a nice addition. Next we have Coalition Relic. This is a very powerful artifact that costs 3 mana, but it can make up to 2 blue every other turn, or the turn it comes down and then making a blue. You can use a Fellow Alchemist to get multiple charges on it in case you need a really critical turn. Very cool card. Helps me get Azami down faster and works well with the engine. Vedalken Shackles, probably the best creature theft spell in the game. Gilded Drake's powerful too for a short burst theft, but when you want long-term theft throughout the game, Vedalken Shackles is your go-to. It's 3 mana and then 2 to steal based on the number of islands you control. Super powerful card. This card wins games. Thran Dynamo. This is in the deck as basically a Super Soul Ring. It's 4 mana, but it makes 3 colorless mana. Helps you cast all the expensive spells, and works really well with the engine. It's very easy to win the game when you double your mana in 1 turn, and Thran Dynamo does that for you. Gilded Lotus, similar vein. I run a lot of these more expensive artifacts too, in addition to them working well with the engine. Is also, you can mana ramp usually into these and sit on them. Like Thran Dynamo, you can cast at 5 mana and have blue 3, cast Fact Fiction. You can cast this as long as you have a Martyr of Frost and use the colorless mana to counterspell. Very potent. Gilded Lotus does something similar for 1 more mana, but it gives you 3 blue mana when you need it. Super powerful. You can use it to get other colors too if something that you stole needs mana to activate. This card is super awesome to mana vault into. It's super awesome to mana drain into. And it's pretty easy to cast because I pretty consistently cast Azami turn 4, sometimes turn 3 depending on the draw. So you can easily get this card down. I often cast this first because it basically guarantees that Azami can be cast with a counterspell. Very powerful card. And then lastly, the engine. This is our main way of winning the game. It supercharges the deck and allows you to just lock people out of the game because you become a demigod when this is on the field. It's 5 mana whenever you cast a spell. Untap all your non-land permanents. You can go infinite with Capsize or Venser, Shaper, Savant. And you can use all the mana and card draw that you want without decking out with the Academy Runes. And you can lock people out permanently with Winter Orb, Capsize, Cyclonic Rift. You can punch people to death with little wizard beats, or you can use Tezzeret the Seeker or Jushi Apprentice, the deck. Tezzeret the Seeker to combat damage people to death, Jushi Apprentice to mill them out, Jace the Mind Sculptor to mill them out, or just simple humble beats will get there. Paradox Engine gives you the power to pull this off, and you can get it back with the Academy Runes. Okay, so this video has gone on for quite a while, so I'm going to call it here. We'll do part 3. But that was the card choices of creatures, lands, and artifacts. It's the vast bulk of the deck tech. I'll cover instants, planeswalkers, and sorceries in the next part, as well as go over some notable exclusions. I want to thank you for your attention. If you stuck it out this far, please feel free to comment below. Ask me why I have certain cards. I can go into a little bit more detail in the comment section if you'd like. But feel free to go ahead and point out some cards that you think I should be running. I always appreciate a very good discussion, and I always want to make my Azami deck better if it's possible to. So thanks again for listening, and I hope to see you in part 3, where we'll finish up the card choice and section of the deck tech. Thank you. Have a great night.